Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Please take your seats.
Then we don't need it. Then
We will start in few minutes. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, honorable members, dear guests. Please take your seats. Dear colleagues, welcome to the 2025 winter meeting of the OECPA General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment. Just a few technical announcements before we formally kick off. Please be informed that colleagues, thank you. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on the OECP's social media platforms and website. Simultaneous interpretation into all 6 OEC languages is provided for this meeting. You just take your headphone. Don't hear us? Yes. Take your headphone, please. So kindly note that an advanced list of speakers for each agenda item has been duly received, but we still have a time. If anyone wishes to be registered to the list of speakers, they can do. I think we have a few times. You can do it during 4 or 5 minutes. And according to the rule 27, I will determine the order in which our members will be called to speak. I kindly ask all speakers to limit their interventions to 2 minutes during the debates. Please pay attention to the timer that will be visible on the screen, thereby enabling a sound exchange of ideas and the timely conclusion of our meeting by 6 p.m. Without further delay, I will proceed with our agenda. As you know, the draft agenda of this meeting has been circulated. I want to ask if there is any objection. So, as we heard no objections, the agenda shall be considered adopted. Dear colleagues, now I will start from the item number 2 of our agenda, which is the opening remarks by Chair of the Committee. Dear colleagues, we meet at a pivotal moment of history marked by significant challenges and crises. Conflicts in different parts of the world are spreading for beyond their initial borders, affecting security, economic stability, and social balance. The war in Ukraine, waged by the Russian Federation, continues to inflict immeasurable human suffering and undermine economic and environmental security throughout the region and beyond. It directly affects our citizens in numerous ways, including through production and cost of living crisis in many of our countries, which cause the closure of important industries with obvious socio-economic repercussions. The war has also severely disrupted global supply chains, highlighting the critical need for resilient, diversified, and secure trade routes to safeguard economic stability and ensure uninterrupted connectivity across the OECD region. In this context, the Middle Corridor is emerging as a critical game changer. As a vital trade and transit route linking Europe and Asia via the South Caucasus and Central Asia, it offers a sustainable and secure alternative to disrupted supply chains. Strengthening the Middle Corridor is not just an economic necessity, it is a strategic imperative for energy security, trade diversification, and regional stability. At the same time, the climate crisis continues to intensify exponentially. Extreme weather events impact every sphere of our lives, displacing communities, driving climate-induced migration, disrupting economies, and exacerbating resource scarcity. We all have vivid in our eyes the horrific images of the California wildfires from earlier this year. The recent COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan, underscored the necessity for immediate action and resulted in several significant outcomes. A new climate finance goal has been set, with developed nations committing to increase annual climate finance to $300 billion by 2035, tripling the previous $100 billion target. After nearly a decade of negotiations, COP29 finalized rules for international carbon markets under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. This framework establishes a UN-backed body to regulate carbon credit trading between countries, potentially unlocking significant climate finance for emission reduction projects, particularly in developing nations. COP29 introduced the Baku Adaptation Roadmap, a strategic initiative aimed at expediting the development and implementation of national adaptation plans to enhance resilience and strengthen preparedness against escalating climate threats. Last year also marked a milestone for the OECD Parliamentary Assembly as we officially participated in COP for the first time and stressed the critical role of parliamentary diplomacy in addressing climate change. As we navigate global challenges, it is also crucial to consider the transformative potential of emerging technologies, and particularly artificial intelligence, whose evolution seems unstoppable and which will greatly impact many aspects of our daily lives. As underscored by our last committee's resolution, AI holds the potential to revolutionize many sectors, offering innovative solutions to pressing issues. Combating climate change is clearly an area in which AI bears great potential. AI-enabled systems can support both climate change adaptation and mitigation action, ranging from early warning systems for natural disasters to optimizing agri-food production and improving the efficiency of energy systems. However, as we all know, the use of AI also raises concerns about ethics, equity, safety, and security, necessitating careful governance to ensure it serves humanity's best interests. Building on that, our priorities for the year ahead will focus on addressing the escalating climate crisis and its influence on energy security, water scarcity, and stability in the region, as well as supporting Ukraine, managing migration challenges, and navigating the opportunities and risks posed by AI. Additionally, fostering economic development through enhanced cooperation and multilateralism, anti-corruption efforts, and good governance will remain central to our agenda. Through parliamentary diplomacy, we aim to foster resilience and sustainable solutions to these pressing global issues. Before we move to the next agenda item, I am pleased to inform you that our committee enjoys excellent and productive collaboration with the executive structures of the OSCE, ensuring alignment of agendas and the continuous exchange of plans and ideas. Yesterday, together with our team from International Secretariat, I had a constructive meeting with Ms. Edith Vakalainen, head of the second dimension of Finland chairpersonship. Additionally, I met with Ambassador Bakir Yusupov, coordinator of OSCE Economic and Environmental Activities, for free-to-flow discussions on key priorities shaping the second dimension across the OSCE region. In each meeting, we reach a strong understanding of the need to coordinate our activities and enhance cooperation on the pressing issues that dominate our agendas. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to both Ms. Vakalainen and Ambassador Yusupov for their unwavering commitment and readiness to contribute to our shared initiatives and common goals. Now, looking at our program, soon we will be hearing from Ms. Paula Cardoza, who will highlight her ideas for the report to be adopted at the next annual session in Porto. We will then listen to Ambassador Bakir Yusupov, coordinator of OSCE Economic and Environmental Activities, and Ms. Natasha Zayich-Herzog, Minister Plenipotentiary, on behalf of Ambassador Melita Zubec, Chair of the Economic and Environmental Committee, who will share their plans for 2025. Besides offering our ideas to the rapporteur, the ensuing debate will provide a good opportunity to strengthen our institutional cooperation with the executive structures. Today's special debate on climate migration in the OSCE region is a testament to our commitment to addressing climate change and its influence on populations around the world. We are therefore privileged to be joined by three distinguished speakers, each offering unique insights into the nature of climate-induced migration, and whom I wish to thank in advance Professor Patrick Sagdopoulou, Professor of Population Geography and Demography, University of Vienna, Mr. Pere Pons, OECPA Vice President and Special Representative on Climate Change, and Ms. Daniela De Ridder, OECPA Vice President and Chair of the ad hoc Committee on Migration. As our deliberation today will shape the trajectory of our future engagement in this complex field, I invite interested members to actively contribute to this timely special debate. Thank you for your attention. Now, moving to the next agenda, I will give the floor to our rapporteur, Ms. Paula Cardoza, who, as I said already, will share her views and ideas for the upcoming annual session in Porto. Dear Paula, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present the first draft of the report for our annual session in Porto. As you already know, the theme for our annual session will be commemorating 50 years of the Helsinki Act, responding to a new reality in the OSCE. In the year, we celebrate 15th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act and the creation of the OSCE. It is worth looking again at the fundamental values of that document that continue to form the basis of the OSCE principles. The Final Act listed principles and norms on relations between participating states that remain fundamentally valid and should guide our actions as parliamentarians. Even though they result from a distant and specific historical context, we can't help but think that their topically remains intact. The events of recent years in the OSCE geographical area, especially the Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine, make us look again to the Final Act as an inspiring document that opened the door to a wave of democratization, peace, and development in Europe. The Final Act was also a pioneering and visionary document in the field of economics, science, technology, and environment. In this context, what stands out most, especially if we look at the reality of 2025, is the environment chapter of the Helsinki Final Act, which mentions, among other areas, cooperation, control of air pollution, water pollution control and freshwater utilization, protection of the marine environment, land utilization and soil, nature conservation and nature reserves, and improvement of environment conditions in areas of human settlement. Environment issues raised 50 years ago are more topical than ever. Diversity of the economies of the participating states, their degree of development, are all factors that we must analyze and consider when we talk about the space of the OSCE. It is not one reality, but several realities that nevertheless share the same problems and ambitions. The acceleration of globalization makes us feel deceptively closer. It is our duty to look at these realities and act by legislating so that our citizens feel part of this space where physically and economic borders are less and less relevant and where development is truly sustainable. Cooperation and integration must overcome mistrust and separation. The report will focus in three main areas: climate change and migration, energy security, and economic development. On climate change and migration, we must pay attention to the obvious. 2024 was the hottest year on record, according to the World Weather Attribution and Climate Central. Extreme weather reached dangerous new heights in 2024. This year's record-breaking temperatures fueled unrelenting heat waves, drought, wildfires, storms, and floods that killed thousands of people and forced millions from their homes. Moreover, the 10 hottest years on record happened in the past decade, including 2024. According to the World Meteorological Organization Secretary General, climate history is playing out before our eyes. We have not just one or two record-breaking years, but a full 10-year series. This has been accompanied by devastating and extreme weather, rising sea levels, and melting ice, all powered by record-breaking greenhouse gas levels due to the human activities. Another study published in Advances in Atmospheric Science found that ocean warming in 2024 played a key role in the record high temperatures. The ocean is the warmest it was ever been, as recorded by humans, not only at the surface, but also for the upper 2,000 meters. About 90% of the excess heat from global warming stored in the ocean, making ocean heat content a critical indicator of the climate change. In this context, the latest developments in the United States are deeply worrying. The decision of the new United States administration to withdraw from the Paris Agreement on climate change erodes the efforts of all states parties and threatens further negotiations, namely the agreements reached during COP29 in Baku. The targets agreed in Baku, although far from perfect, represented hope for many developing countries. Another important milestone at multilateral levels was the recent adoption by the United Nations of the Pact for the Future. In the area of sustainable development, climate and financing for development, several ideas were approved that deserve our support. These goals cannot be jeopardized. On the contrary, they must be strengthened and have the unconditional support of each one of our countries. Although the problem of water scarcity and access to drinking water sources is not the main concern of most of our countries, it does exist in some specific regions where water resources are scarcer and more fragile. This is the case in Southern Europe and Central Asia. The Aral Sea and the surrounding region is probably the most serious situation in the OSC area and one that requires great attention. Climate refugees are now a reality in every continent. Wars and climate disasters have driven a tenfold increase in the number of internally displaced people, especially in Africa. More than 2,016 million people across 5 continents will be on the move within their countries by 2050. In large part due to the climate change, many of these IDPs will seek refuge in Europe or North America. International funding and assistance are needed on a large scale, but we all know this is not popular for voters in many of our countries due to the short-term election cycles and to the rise of populist ideas. Although migration flows should be regulated according to national legislation, the basic principles of international humanitarian law must also apply in specific case for climate and political refugees. On energy security, we must continue to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and increase public and private investment in all types of clean and renewable energies: solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, ocean, waves, and bioenergy. The dependence of part of Europe on fossil fuels from Russia, especially after the invasion of Ukraine, has reinforced our energy weakness. The measures taken since then have mitigated some of this weakness. However, much remains to be done, as it is not enough to look for new sources of polluting energy. Without a global concerted strategy to support renewable energies, we are only masking our problems. We know that there is a growing trend in global energy consumption. Faced with this scenario, which will intensify in the coming years, energy distribution networks will play a fundamental role, as they will require major investment not only for their expansion but also to reinforce their capacity, particularly to withstand extreme weather events. We must also focus our attention on simplifying the procedures for producing energy from renewable sources and tackling energy poverty. On economic development, good governance, environmental awareness, tackling corruption, cross-border cooperation and improving conditions for investment are areas we should pay more attention to. One of the main challenges from the OS region is the coming years will be the task of rebuilding Ukraine. Russian aggression, which continues to this day, has destroyed vital infrastructures, government buildings and housing, caused millions of refugees and IDPs, and had devastating consequences for the country's economy. Whatever the outcome of this aggression, its consequences will last in Ukraine and throughout the OSCE area for many years to come. There must therefore be a joint effort by our countries, international organizations, especially the OSCE and the European Union and our societies to support Ukraine and Ukrainians. Regarding the economic development of the OSCE area, and despite differences that separate us, we must move towards greater integration and interdependence. Strengthening trade and economic relations must be a priority for our governments. Economic isolation and the imposition of unjustified trade barriers cannot be the solution. Otherwise, trade wars that nobody can win will be the new normal. The reindustrialization of our societies through investments that are not speculative but truly productive must guide our legislative agenda. Governments must also strengthen their means of protecting and investing in critical infrastructures. The recent sabotage of data and energy transmission cables in the Baltic Sea deserves our condemnation and attention through increased surveillance. Also in this context, we must not forget that in the coming years, our countries will have to make a greater budgetary investment effort in defense. Support for defense industries, whether they already exist or are yet to be created, should be seen as an opportunity to create jobs, invest in scientific and technological development and economic growth. In recent decades, world trade has undergone significant changes, firstly due to industrial relocation to other geographies, but also with development of new technologies that had radically changed the paradigm of work. Artificial intelligence is probably the biggest change of recent decades, not only in the labor market, but also in our daily lives and even in the relationships between countries. It is already automating many of the tasks we perform today, which will transform the workforce for the future. Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, without real and sustainable economic development, without equal opportunities, there is not real democracy, and as a result, our citizens do not feel truly represented politically and socially. At a time when democratic values are under threat, the commitment to sustainable economic development is a fundamental pillar of our societies. Economic freedom and support for the creation and growth of the private sector must be accompanied by social measures to support the most fragile and disadvantaged sectors. It is against this background that our government must nurture innovation, foster competition, and protect the most vulnerable. Invest in efficiency and encourage companies to do the same. We all need to adapt to the challenge of sustainable development, digital and green transition, and the spread of artificial intelligence. I thank you all for your attention and look forward to our comments and questions and suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear Paula, dear colleagues, as you see, there are many issues that our committee needs to address. I think, Paula, you have a lot of job to do ahead of the portal and our annual session, importing your beautiful country. I look forward to working with you on the path to portal, and I hope that we will get also very informative feedback from our colleagues and let us work together. Thank you very much. I wish all the best. Dear colleagues, the winter meeting is also meant to facilitate our interaction with the governmental structures of the OSCE dealing with economy and environmental security. As I already mentioned, our committee enjoys excellent cooperation with the executive structures of the organization, also owing to the daily work of our staff in Vienna, whom I thank wholeheartedly. We regularly contribute to relevant OSCE initiatives and events in the second dimension. Similarly, we always invite OSCE leaders and experts to inform our policy debates. Finally, we often meet bilaterally to coordinate priorities and activities. Moving forward, I am delighted to give the floor to Ambassador Bakir Yusupov and hear his plans for 2025. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, dear members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, dear colleagues, allow me to start by welcoming you here in Vienna. It's always a pleasure to exchange with the parliamentarians from across the region. Let me also express my gratitude to the Secretary General, Mr. Montella, and Chairperson of the Second Committee, our dear friend, Mr. Azay Guliyev, for the invite and for the opportunity to contribute to today's special debate. We live in turbulent times. Political priorities are evolving quickly, and changes at national levels result in changes at international levels, challenging the stability and perspectives for international organizations like ours. This, unsurprisingly, may have significant impacts for our activities. In this environment, it's not easy to plan and implement our program. Flexibility and adaptability become more important than ever. However, many threats to regional security in the second dimension remain the same. Under such uncertainties, we recently prepared and distributed the Office of the Coordinator of Economic and Environmental Activities, OSCE's annual work plan supporting participating states implement commitments derived from the relevant Ministerial Council decisions. I will briefly inform you about some of our plans this year, well knowing that the political environment and change in resource availability may force us to make adjustments and prioritize further. But I am sure that partnership like we enjoy it between OSCE and the Parliamentary Assembly may offer scope for synergies and opportunities to mitigate impacts from challenges and unexpected developments. Let me start with economic activities. Fighting corruption and money laundering remains a top priority for my office. In 2024, we established an OSCE-wide anti-corruption focal point system, and we published the first annual report on OSCE anti-corruption activities. The Parliamentary Assembly is, of course, part of the focal point system, and we much appreciate the cooperation in this specific instance and in the field of fighting corruption in general. We support many of our participating states in their efforts of fighting corruption, for example, by building capacities in how to investigate and regulate virtual assets and in identification, seizure, confiscation, management, and reuse of assets from organized crime. In the field of connectivity, my office will publish the practical guide to cross-border facilitation. It will serve both as a comprehensive introduction to the subject and as a framework resource guide for cross-border facilitation specific training. We are also about to launch a new, broader XB project on promoting cross-border connectivity and continue implementing our flagship project on green ports in Caspian Sea, now in its third phase and with more focus on climate-resilient ports. Some updates on our work on environmental cooperation and energy security. The office has developed a repository program to strengthen disaster risk reduction and management capacities in the OSCE region, with specific focus on enhancing early warning and response capabilities. We are currently developing a pilot project with a focus on disaster preparedness, prevention, and early warning system for Central Asia in cooperation with relevant field operations. My office will continue the implementation of significant projects focusing on water management, hazardous waste, sustainable cities, and good environmental governance, framing the conditions for transboundary and collaborative actions to mitigate environmental degradation and disasters. We will also continue the relevant work under the XB project on assessment environmental impacts of the war against Ukraine, with additional policy briefs on water, hazardous waste, and disaster risk management. On the energy side, further efforts will be dedicated to supporting the resilience of energy systems, promoting clean technology and energy efficiency, and promoting women's empowerment in the energy sector. The extra budgetary project mitigating climate change threats to critical energy infrastructure will pursue activities to enhance the capacity of energy decision makers and stakeholders across the OSCE region to address the impacts of climate change on the energy sector. Dear colleagues, the special debate following this session will focus on climate migration in the OSCE region. I do want to use this opportunity to also brief you on our work on climate change in general and on the specific topic of the special debate. We witness with increased frequency how extreme weather events and environmental degradation lead to displacement of the exposed populations. According to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, climate-related hazards like floods, storms, and wildfires are a major driver for a global human mobility, playing a role in 26.4 million displacement in 2023. 1975's Helsinki Final Act, 2007 Madrid Declaration on Environment and Security, 2009 Athens Ministerial Council Decision on Migration Management, and 2021 Stockholm Ministerial Council Decision on Strengthening Cooperation to Address the Challenges Caused by Climate Change, and some others. It is within the remit of this mandate the OSCE supports participating states to identify and address the multifaceted risks and challenges posed by climate change to our economies, environment, and societies, including in relation to human mobility. At the heart of our efforts in this area is the overall risk assessment mapping of climate change to security, the understanding of the linkages between climate change and, in our today's case, human mobility, and the promotion of regional and transboundary cooperation to enhance climate adaptation strategies. Allow me to illustrate this very shortly through our flagship project on climate and security in Southeastern Europe, Eastern Europe, the South Caucasus, and Central Asia. First, we have supported climate and security risk assessments in all regions of the project. Second, taking stock of the regional risk assessments results in 2024, we started a new activity that aims to enhance the understanding of the interlinkages between climate change, human mobility, and security in Southeastern Europe. Based on evidence from data analysis, desk research, and stakeholder consultations, the report, which will be ready by November 2025, will provide an up-to-date analysis of relationship between climatic shocks and human mobility in the region. This activity is implemented jointly with International Institute for Applied Systems, and we will hear more on this today, lately. Third, this activity will enhance cooperation among regional stakeholders and develop a roadmap to facilitate a coordinated regional approach to strengthen climate resilience. Dear colleagues, I hope these examples illustrate how my office is contributing to advancing research on pressing challenges, facilitating knowledge sharing, policy dialogue, and cooperation in the OSCE region. In conclusion, let me underline once again the excellent collaboration we enjoy with the Parliamentary Assembly, citing, for instance, the participation of Special Representatives Mr. Perepons in the OSCE official side event in Baku at COP29 last year, and number of other significant events in economic and environmental dimension throughout the whole 2024, demonstrating the complementary of our respective roles. Dear Mr. Guliyev, dear members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, my office looks forward to continuing to work with you on these issues and in the second dimension as a whole. I thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador, for your interesting presentation. I'm always impressed when I hear the amount of the work you are doing and conducting. Really, it is very much impressed. And your remark also confirmed that how it is important to coordinate our activities as parliamentarians and the executive branch of OSCE. And thank you very much. Looking forward to continuing our great cooperation. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natasha Zayach-Hessek, Minister Plenipotentiary, who will deliver the address on behalf of Ambassador Melita Zupevich, newly appointed chair of the Economic and Environmental Committee. Dear Zayach-Hessek, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished members of the Parliamentary Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the chairperson of the Economic and Environmental Committee, Slovenian Ambassador Permanent Representative Melita Zupevich, I would like to express our gratitude for the kind invitation to address the esteemed members of the General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment at this 24th winter meeting of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The OSCE's guiding principles and commitments have laid a robust foundation for our activities in the economic and environmental spheres, offering a clear pathway for enhanced cooperation within the second dimension. Indeed, the OSCE's economic and environmental dimension plays a vital role as a bridge between the first and the third dimensions. It can foster greater trust among participating states and supports a comprehensive approach to security. This year, Slovenia has taken on the responsibility of chairing the Economic and Environmental Committee. I would like to express our gratitude to Finland's chairpersonship for placing their trust in us. I would also like to use this opportunity to extend our heartfelt thanks to Ambassador Florian Rauning, the former chair, and to his dedicated team for their exemplary work in steering the committee. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the priorities for our work in the Economic and Environmental Committee in 2025 are aligned with the Finnish chairpersonship's objectives. We will continue to address both economic and environmental issues with equal attention. Over the course of the year, at least 6 meetings of the committee are planned. The main topics will be a result of extensive consultations conducted by the Finnish chairpersonship and Slovenian chair with participating states delegations and the Office of the Coordinator for Economic and Environmental Activities. Our goal is to further empower the Economic and Environmental Committee to monitor and support the implementation of commitments by the participating states in key areas. The thematic meetings will provide an important platform to enhance our discussions and cooperation, amongst others addressing the water-food energy nexus while ensuring the integrity of our ecosystems, sustainable economic growth and good governance, the role of innovation, new technology, and access to data in water management, but also the concept of smart and resilient cities in the context of enhancing security. Additionally, Russia's aggression on Ukraine, with its dire economic and environmental consequences, has been and will remain an important element of the discussions of the second committee. With increasingly complex economic and environmental challenges, it is vital that we adopt a multi-stakeholder approach. Engaging governments, private sector, and academia in addressing these issues is crucial, as well as advocating inclusive approach and gender perspective in both sectors. We will also continue to draw on the valuable experience of OSCE field missions by encouraging them to participate actively. This will further enrich our discussions and promote enhanced interaction between delegations and field operations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to highlight the existing synergies between the Economic and Environmental Committee and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, with the shared goal of achieving our common objectives. In particular, the experience and expertise of this General Committee can be of great value in our thematic meetings. I'm confident that with the continued active support of the Parliamentary Assembly, together with the participating states and the executive structures of the OSCE, we can make significant strides on many critical issues in the economic and environmental dimension in 2025. We look forward to further expanding our collaboration with you. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention and wish the honorable members of the Parliamentary Assembly a successful and productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Herzeg, for your interesting presentation. I truly look forward to building momentum on our cooperation with the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee. For instance, we can hold or organize some joint event together to show our solidarity as the second dimension of OSCE. Thank you again. Dear colleagues, I will now open the first debate. Among interested participants, I encourage everyone to be constructive and to the point. By now, I have received 12 members' request to take the floor. As I already mentioned, we have 30 minutes available. Maybe it would be good if we just limit to 2 minutes and to let the others to take the floor and to make some statement. So I also want to remind you that the countdown visible on the screen will help you manage your speaking time. Once it becomes red, please conclude. Now I will call our first speaker, Dr. Daniela De Rieder of Germany. She is here. Daniela, please, you have the floor, and to be followed by Ms. Lucica Takir of Slovenia. Daniela, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Azai. Thank you, dear Mr. Chair. Excellencies, we are gathered to address one of the most pressing humanitarian and security challenges of our time, climate-induced migration. In my remarks, I would like to focus on the impact of climate change on people, the necessity of integrating climate migration into our policies, and the urgent need to build resilience and sustainable solutions to mitigate the challenges ahead. There are no specific grounds for granting asylum to people displaced due to climate events. Nevertheless, in 2023, UNHCR highlighted situation in which individuals could still receive protection under the 1951 Convention, notably in case of people fleeing conflict or violence caused for exacerbated by the effects of climate change or disasters, environmental defenders, activists, and journalists persecuted for reporting on government responses to climate change, which may be considered a political stance. People certainly belonging to particular groups disproportionately suffering the greatest impact of climate change, compounded by pre-existing discrimination, gender-based violence, let me highlight this, human trafficking, and child marriage. Further, in situations where climate change leads to food insecurity or famine, and where the state is unwilling or unable to ensure non-discriminatory access to food to certain groups. To effectively respond to the challenges associated with climate-induced migration, a multi-faceted approach is necessary. Government and international organizations should conduct systematic assessment of environmental changes and their migration-related impacts to identify at-risk population and regions. This will also further enhance research-based policymaking. Secondly, a stage-specific approach is essential and composing policies that mitigate climate change, provide protection during displacement, and facilitate reintegration or resettlement for affected population. And thirdly, efforts should also be made to expand legal protections through international agreements and national legislation. Fourth, the promotion of collaborating between states, regional and international bodies, as well as local communities and civil societies, dear colleagues, with the aim to develop cooperative strategies, resource sharing, and capacity building initiative is also crucial. Dear colleagues, in order to effectively address climate-induced migration, we must tackle its root causes by fostering sustainability, enhancing resilience, and implementing proactive policies that protect vulnerable communities. The OSCE-PA's General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology, and Environment, and also our Special Representative Per John Pons, have done excellent work in highlighting the urgency of to address climate change migration. The ad hoc committee on migration that I have the honor to chair has also consistently called upon OSCE participating states to pay due attention to the root causes of migration, including climate change. In the resolution adopted at the 2024 annual session in Bucharest, and it was a lot of work, the strengthening safe and regular pathway for migration, we emphasized the importance of recognizing the diversity of causes of forced migration, including natural disasters and climate change. We strongly urged states to strengthen cooperation with countries of origin and transit and environmental protection and the fight against climate change, to prevent natural disasters, as well as to secure access to clean drinking water and to protect fertile farmlands. I will be brief, I would like to cite an example of best practice from Germany, from my homeland, where the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the so-called BMZ, actively addresses climate-induced migration in vulnerable regions through initiatives such as a global program on human mobility and the context of climate change. Dear colleagues, climate-induced migration is a growing reality that demands immediate and decisive action. The absence of legal recognition and the complexity of this issue make it particularly challenging. However, by adopting a proactive, research-based and cooperative approach, we can develop effective policies that protect vulnerable population and enhance global resilience to climate change in our OSCE region. And this is urgent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear Daniela, for really great presentation. Actually, as far as I understood, you delivered your speech for the next item.
Okay,
So
I'm
this is
sorry.
about climate
You
management.
will
It's
have to
okay.
hear it again.
So
then.
I just wanted to make some clarification that it is not
Yeah, okay.
about the first debate, but it is good that you have already delivered.
Okay, so you have
So
heard it.
you
I
will-
will repeat it afterwards and change it a little bit.
So you are free, feel free to
Okay.
join there for the
I will add
next,
something afterwards.
debate.
Yeah,
Thank you very
sure.
much indeed. And
Okay.
now I continue for the first, with the list of the first debate. Now I want to call Ms. Lucia Tasser from Slovenia, and to be followed by Mr. Pascal Lecamp from France. Madame Tarker, sorry if I pronounce wrongly, please you have the floor.
So. But don't care.
No one? She's not here? Ah, okay, please.
It's not working. Can you try to use the next one, maybe?
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
this works. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair. Thank you to all the speakers, and I would especially like to thank Deputy Head of Delegation Zayat Herzog for the presentation, for her contributions. We are very proud that Slovenia is chairing the Economic and Environmental Committee. When a survey was conducted in Slovenia among Slovenians living abroad, considering to come back to our country, on the reasons that they would consider before moving back, environment was their top answer. Clean water and our nature. And that brings me to the aspect that I would like to highlight in my contribution, and that is brain drain. Countries sometimes seem to think that brain drain is a zero-sum game. One country wins, another loses. However, in the context of migrations that we have been experiencing over the past decades, it's evident that the unequal distribution of human capital leads to insecurity, leads to instability. And that is why within the network of young parliamentarians in the OSCE, we are opening this topic. This is a topic that was already opened in Vienna when we met before this meeting. It will continue to be open until the annual session in the summer. And that is a contribution that I think we can continue having in Portugal. So how can we address brain circulation, not preventing brain drain, especially taking into account the digital aspect? We know we can live somewhere today and work just about anywhere in the world. How can we use these tools on a regional level to ensure greater stability? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Now I want to give the floor to Mr. Pascal Lecamp from France, to be followed by Mr. Mark Vizet of United States of America. Mr. Pascal, please, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La première sécurité économique et environnementale, c'est la sécurité alimentaire, issue de l'économie du monde agricole. Elle est aussi le gage de la paix dans nos démocraties et plus généralement de la paix dans le monde. L'espace de l'OSCE compte de nombreux grands pays agricoles qui assurent la sécurité alimentaire non seulement au sein de l'OSCE, mais également pour de nombreux autres pays. Cependant, un équilibre doit être trouvé entre cette sécurité alimentaire indispensable et l'harmonisation des règles au sein de l'OSCE, notamment celles concernant les traitements de production agricole. Il en va de la protection de nos consommateurs, où qu'ils vivent, il en va de notre santé collective et de celle des générations futures. À titre d'exemple, est-il normal que 75% des noisettes et des cerises importées en France, d'autres pays de l'OSCE, soient traitées avec de l'acétamipride, alors que ce produit est strictement interdit en France, car toxique? Je ne le crois pas. Je pense, tout comme chacun ici, que tous les consommateurs ont droit à cette sécurité alimentaire et environnementale. Alors que le changement climatique va contraindre nos agriculteurs à s'adapter, voire parfois à changer de culture produite sur leurs parcelles, les sujets environnementaux doivent plus que jamais redonner confiance aux consommateurs et permettre à ceux qui nous nourrissent de pouvoir continuer à le faire avec fierté et dans la dignité. Ces harmonisations, dans un premier temps, parmi les 57 pays de l'OCDE, permettraient également d'éviter de déstabiliser les marchés agricoles mondiaux en limitant les distorsions de concurrence et ainsi protéger nos agricultures respectives. Ainsi, si nos travaux portent souvent sur la guerre d'agression qui touche l'Ukraine, et c'est bien légitime, nous ne devons pas oublier que ce pays, par son potentiel, est au cœur même de ces sujets agricoles et alimentaires, en particulier pour certains pays du nord de l'Afrique. Notre soutien à l'agriculture ukrainienne touchée fortement par la guerre a permis dès 2022 une libéralisation temporaire des échanges sur les produits ukrainiens. C'est pour cela qu'en 2024, l'Union européenne a mis en place ces mécanismes protecteurs des marchés locaux. Lorsque la paix sera là, une paix juste et durable, et Dieu sait si elle est menacée ces jours-ci par nos nouvelles alliances, l'Ukraine devra travailler sur la nécessaire intégration de l'acquis communautaire, et je sais qu'elle y travaille. Cette solidarité des pays de l'OSCE sur ce sujet central de l'économie qu'est l'agriculture est plus que jamais indispensable face aux murs et aux diktats que certains essayent de nous imposer. La sécurité alimentaire et environnementale ne doit pas obéir à la loi du plus fort, mais à celle de la prise de conscience que notre alimentation structurera notre avenir et nos valeurs pour le plus grand bien de nos démocraties et des générations futures. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to our colleague from United States of America, Mr. Mark Vize, to be followed by Mr. Oleg Rumo of Belarus. Mr. Vize, please, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I want to congratulate everyone that is an OSCE participating state. You did something very important during this blustery winter season. You gave Vladimir Putin and Russia the cold shoulder. And as a result of you giving him the cold shoulder, you have made yourself less dependent on his energy sources. And you are to be congratulated for that. Of course, it did disrupt a lot of the green energy projects that were being worked on across Europe. But in 2024, you made a quick transition, and the United States shipped nearly 50,000 metric tons of LNG to Europe, approximately half of the U.S. exports. And this increased supplies to OSCE participating states to quickly and drastically reduce their dependency on Putin. I want to congratulate Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Thank you very much for taking historic steps on February the 8th to decouple from Putin's electrical grid and thus ushering in an era of increased energy independence from Russia and integration with your EU neighbors. We must ensure that Russia cannot use proxies, enablers, or complex international supply chains to evade the devastating sanctions imposed against it. Russia must not be given the resources to prosecute its war. It must also be held accountable for the human, environmental, and economic damage it is inflicting on its neighbors. In 10 years since Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine, Russia has inflicted some $60 billion in damages to Ukraine's natural and man-made environment, and their nuclear power plants are shelled, dams have been destroyed, and thousands of square miles of agricultural land have been burned and mined and contaminated by toxic heavy metals. We must be unwavering in our commitment to protect these critical infrastructures from these hybrid attacks, and I look forward to working with OSCE participating states on how we can further send the message that Vladimir Putin, we don't need your energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vize, for your intervention. And now I'd like to give the floor to our colleague, Mr. Oleg Rumo from Belarus, to be followed by Ms. Hanna Linkman of Ukraine. Mr. Rumo, please, you have the floor.
Уважаемые члены Ассамблеи, размышляя над заявленной сегодня темой продвижения общего подхода ОБСЕ по укреплению экономической и экологической безопасности, хотел бы заострить внимание коллег на факторе, который в существенной мере препятствует укреплению этой безопасности, тормозит экономический рост и устойчивое развитие в регионе ОБСЕ. Это санкции и односторонние принудительные меры. В последние годы Беларусь подвергается беспрецедентному массированному внешнему давлению с применением широкого спектра дискриминационных мер. Позиция нашей страны в отношении таких мер была и остается неизменной. Санкции незаконны с точки зрения международного права и устава ООН. Они противоречат основным принципам ОБСЕ, наносят ущерб экономическим интересам и благополучию государств и народов и не способствуют разрешению противоречий и решению острых проблем. Напротив, они лишь усугубляют их. К сожалению, сегодня мы остаемся свидетелями углубления разделительных линий на пространстве ОБСЕ и применению мер экономического принуждения, противоречащих нашим общим обязательствам. В этом контексте хотели бы обратить внимание на действия Еврокомиссии в 2024 году по введению фактически запретительных пошлин на белорусскую и российскую сельскохозяйственную продукцию при их импорте в страны Евросоюза. Эти действия, очевидно, идут вразрез с принципами и обязательствами ОБСЕ. Беларусь еще раз обращает внимание на эту проблему и призывает государства, участники ОБСЕ, отказаться от использования односторонних принудительных мер, противоречащих их духу и принципам. Минск рассматривает взаимоуважительный диалог как единственный путь для сближения позиций и поиска совместных решений возникающих проблем. Очевидно, что цели приведения экономики Беларуси в коллапс санкции не достигли. ВВП Беларуси растет, мы диверсифицируем нашу экономику, устойчиво следуем по пути импортозамещения и обеспечения технологической независимости. Вместе с тем признаем, что без санкций наше экономическое развитие было бы более динамичным. Точно так же понятно, что из-за рестриктивных мер страдают и сами европейцы. Со своей стороны, Беларусь готова вносить свой вклад в решение мирового продовольственного кризиса, всецело поддерживает усилия, направленные на развитие и задействование значительного потенциала ОБСЕ для укрепления нашей общей безопасности. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rumon. I'd like to give the floor to our colleague from Ukraine, Ms. Anna Linkman, and to be followed by Mr. Christos Sinekis of Cyprus. Madam Linkman, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, in the context of the full fair-scale war launched by Russian Federation, Ukraine's economic and environmental security faces unprecedented threats. That is why international partnership support is critically important to ensure economic resilience in the environmental protection. As we know, Russia has been occupying the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the biggest NPP in Europe, since the 4th of March in 2022, violating all principles of nuclear and radiation safety. Russia continues creating an extremely dangerous situation as the station poses a direct threat on the nuclear safety of all mankind. The threat of the enemy attacks of nuclear energy facilities and the critical infrastructure necessary for their operation remains pressing. Over the past months, missiles and attack drones routes have to move close to NPPs, creating a real threat of striking of nuclear facilities. More 120 cases of missiles or drones flying over the or near NPPs have been recorded. The systematic strikes by Russia on substations critical to the operation of the nuclear energy complexes indicated as a risk of nuclear accident is extremely high and real. On the night of 14th of February 2025, the world stood on the brink of the new nuclear catastrophe. The Russian Federation launched a drone attack on the shelter covering the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the very site of the worst nuclear disaster in human history. It was unprecedented act of nuclear terrorism, not only against Ukraine, but against all of Europe. Dear colleagues, Russia's continuing attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure are also direct threats to Europe's energy security and independence. These strikes go beyond military objectives. They are acts of economic and humanitarian aggression aimed at destabilizing Ukraine's economy and destroying Europe's collective resilience. We must unite our efforts to contain this enemy. It's time for powerful sanction against nuclear and energy terrorism. And of course, strengthening Ukraine's defense capability must remain a priority. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Lichtman, and I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Christos Seneriks from Cyprus, to be followed by Mr. Eruca Birhante of Portugal. Please, if I just pronounce your surname not correctly, please, sorry for that. So, Christos, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, our focus this year is on advancing a common approach in promoting economic and environmental security. But when we look around the OSCE region, we don't see much of a common approach and perhaps not enough security. While hard security faces persistent challenges, economic security should not be taken for granted either. The pillars of economic prosperity and security in Europe, upon which the post-World War II order has been constructed, seem to be questioned. among increased competition from rising powers, regional cooperation between Europe and the US seems more reasonable if we want to stand a fair chance to shape the rules of the international order according to our interests and values. And of course, a trade war between USA and Europe is above the potential of our budgets. It certainly does not advance economic security. In reality, the US is a strategic and the EU's largest partner in terms of trade and investment. Strengthening transatlantic relations through a positive trade agenda and expanding our areas of cooperation must remain as a common priority. At this crucial time, our focus should be on the exact ways with which we can smooth out differences instead of deepening them. Environmental security also remains a key theme across the OSCE region. It is now confirmed that 2024 was the first year that pushed past 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and this is a very worrisome development. And in this context, the green transition, which has drawn much attention after the recent withdrawal of the US from the Paris Agreement, still remains a necessity. The question is, should we implement the green transition at a pace that will harm our economy's competitiveness? The answer is clearly no. So it is important that European states find ways to support their competitive edge. With this in mind, when we talk about the green transition, the main driver is energy. In this regard, Cyprus signed a few days ago 2 further agreements with Egypt on the exploitation on natural gas reserves in Cyprus' exclusive economic zone, hoping to be able to contribute in Europe's green transition. We must continue to provide strong support to the idea that economic prosperity and the green transition can go hand in hand, and we can tackle climate change while growing our economies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senekis. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Deis. I hope it is a correct pronunciation, from Portugal, and to be followed by Ms. Maria Karapetyan of Armenia. Mr. Deis, please, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, dear Chairman, dear members of the panel, dear colleagues. The most famous Portuguese poet in the 20th century wrote, "The trader, the human being that do trade, needs to study who is going to be served without prejudice, not considering the others, the foreigners, as a group which behaves exactly as our national or ethnic group. Not taking the other, the foreigner, as someone which thinks or reasoning like us. If we want to do trade, we really need to understand the other. How does he or she behaves? How does he or she understands the world? We can resume, if we want peace, a stability built on trust and well-being, trade done based on this understanding is an effective tool to reach that goal. Sharing common interests, building a common understanding, paves the way for trust and avoids obstacles which nowadays could lead us to a terrible war. Trade can be an effective tool for peace and security. It involves different parts of our societies, not only governments, but also companies, micro companies and SMEs, and other institutions, creating a ground where communities from different countries share views, goals, and try to exchange not only goods and services, but also ideas which are critical to build a common and peaceful future, and that is security. As members of this parliament, we should underline that, and we need to say to our governments, we need more cross-border cooperation, we need more SMEs trading, we need more market opportunities, and we need to talk and work with our trade and promotion organizations, with our business associations, connecting companies. More trade is part of the solution. And finally, when some political actors are using tariffs and are not using multilateral tools to negotiate and are imposing a unilateral agenda, launching a trade war where all communities will lose, we need to say to the world, we can cooperate more, we can do more trade involving business actors to respond to these challenging times. And finally, I'm sorry, welcome to Oporto in June. We are waiting for you with our arms wide open. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, by the way. So, our next speaker is Ms. Maria Karapetyan from Armenia, and she will be followed by Ms. Irina Gerashenko of Ukraine. Madam Karapetyan, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Madam Rapporteur, thank you for the outline of the report that you're preparing for us. Please take my remarks as some input from Armenia for your kind consideration to include in the final report and the draft resolution. The South Caucasus is one of the geographies on our continent where the transition from west to east takes place. Between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, our region is one way Europe connects to Central and Southeast Asia. Armenia's vision for the South Caucasus is to turn it into a crossroads of peace, ensuring the smoothest transit of commerce, energy, and people across our region. 2024 was unprecedented in terms of peace in our region. Not a single incident has taken place on our border with Azerbaijan. We believe that Armenia and Azerbaijan can make one final effort and sign the peace treaty any moment now, opening ground also for enhanced economic cooperation in our region. We believe that Armenia and Azerbaijan have a lot to gain in using each other's territory to reach different parts of their own territory, as well as to connect to other neighboring countries. We know Azerbaijan would like a transit through Armenia to more easily reach its exclave, Nakhchivan, and Armenia would like a transit through Azerbaijan to more easily connect with its southern region of Syunik. We are proposing to make a final effort in this direction as well, and to unblock all communications in our region based on respect for each other's territorial integrity and jurisdiction. We're also optimistic and looking forward to the decision of Turkey to open the border with us and establish diplomatic relations, beginning a new era for our countries and the region. We can make the South Caucasus a region of connection and dialogue and start cooperating on the economy, the environment, and whatnot. Interdependence with neighbors, that is our vision for the future of the South Caucasus, and we hope our neighbors will reciprocate on this. We would like the South Caucasus to no longer be associated with conflict and blockade, but rather with peace and connectivity. We extend a hand to our neighbors in reaching this goal together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Karapetyan. Now, our next speaker is from Ukraine, Ms. Irina Gerashenko. She will be followed by Ms. Lilena Tanguy from France. Madam Gerashenko, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. President. Migration is a pressing issue for all countries, but for Ukraine, it has a different context. The population of Ukraine, according to optimistic estimates, has dropped to 35 million. 6 million people are refugees abroad. Ukraine has the highest mortality rate globally and one of the lowest birth rate, with only 6 births per 1,000 people. This is a demographic catastrophe. The security situation and context bombing force many mothers and children to leave. Over 3,800 educational institutions have been damaged. A million Ukrainian children are studying remotely. With my children in Kiev attend school in bomb shelter every day. 1,600 medical facilities have been damaged. Let's 2,000 children have been killed or injured. The UN estimated 12,000 civilian casualties, but I think the actual number is much higher. Not all Russian war crimes are documented. Over 60,000 Ukrainian, including civilian, military personnel, women and children, are held in Russian captivity. We need help to free them. Officially, 20,000 Ukrainian children have been kidnapped and deported by Russia. Russia. Russia must be held accountable for these crimes. How do we address the demographic situation? First, the priority is security and achieving a just peace. Second, the return of refugees and inclusive post-war reconstruction. And third, Ukraine's accession to the EU will encourage people to stay in the country and region. Thank you very much, dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, Madam Gerashenko, for your intervention. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Liliana Tanguy from France, to be followed by Mr. Mikhail Zmajevic from Croatia. Madam Tanguy, please, you have the floor.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je souhaitais intervenir sur la question de la migration climatique qui est une réalité grandissante dans l'espace géographique de l'OSCE et au-delà. Alors, il a été question là de sécheresse, d'inondation, de montée des eaux, qui sont des phénomènes qui s'amplifient, comme c'est le cas dans ma circonscription sur la côte atlantique en Bretagne, où les tempêtes sont de plus en plus violentes et où l'élévation du niveau de la mer continue inexorablement. On peut aussi citer le cyclone qui a dévasté le département de Mayotte, département français, et qui va nécessiter une reconstruction qui sera très coûteuse et très difficile à réaliser. Donc tous ces phénomènes poussent, comme ça a été dit, des milliers de personnes à quitter leur foyer. Alors ces déplacements soulèvent des enjeux humanitaires, économiques et juridiques qui nécessitent une réponse collective et adaptée. Et je voudrais ici parler en tant que vice-présidente du réseau parlementaire pour un environnement sain et durable de l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe, puisque je me suis particulièrement investie en faveur de cette cause. Et face à ce défi, nous avons la responsabilité d'agir en faveur d'une justice climatique, et cela passe par une solidarité accrue avec les populations les plus vulnérables, par des mécanismes d'anticipation et d'adaptation, mais aussi par un financement à la hauteur des enjeux. Je voudrais souligner ici le fait que la France s'engage résolument en faveur d'une finance climatique plus juste et équitable. Lors du sommet pour un nouveau pacte financier mondial en 2023 à Paris, nous avons plaidé pour une réforme des institutions financières internationales afin d'alléger les dettes des pays les plus exposés et de leur permettre d'investir dans des solutions durables. Nous devons maintenant accélérer cette dynamique avec des financements innovants et en renforçant des engagements des États et du secteur privé. Alors, face à ces défis environnementaux, ma question est comment les États de la région de l'OSCE peuvent-ils mieux anticiper et encadrer les migrations climatiques, notamment en développant des mécanismes de protection juridique des populations déplacées, tout en garantissant un partage équitable des responsabilités entre pays d'origine, de transit et d'accueil. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Madam Tanguy, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Mikhail Zmajevic from Croatia, and he will be followed by Mr. Kemal Çelik of Turkey. Please, Mikhail, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, why should we care about economic and environmental security when wars, energy crisis, and geopolitical tensions dominate the headlines? Because in today's world, energy is a weapon, climate change is a destabilizer, and economic insecurity is a trigger for conflict. For Croatia, a country deeply tied to tourism and highly exposed to climate extremes, resilience is not a theoretical discussion, it is a matter of survival. Rising sea levels, devastating droughts, and deadly wildfires are no longer future risks. They are happening now. Should we wait for the next disaster to force our hand, or will we finally act with urgency this crisis demands? There is a blind spot in the global security discussions, climate migration. While Croatia has not yet faced large-scale displacement, prolonged droughts, floods, and wildfires are already reshaping migration flows worldwide. When climate refugees knock on Europe's door, will we be prepared or will we scramble for last-minute solutions? The OSCE must take the lead in the development early warning systems, strengthening cross-border cooperation and ensuring that migration driven by climate disasters does not lead to instability. The same applies to energy security. We cannot talk about sovereignty while depending on imported energy. The OSCE must champion renewables, support green investments, and build regional energy resilience, not as an environmental initiative, but as a core pillar of security. Without energy independence, no country is truly independent. We cannot afford to be passive observers in this unfolding crisis. The time for bold, coordinated action is now, and Croatia stands ready to contribute to OSCE agenda that turns risks into opportunities for security, stability, and sustainable growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Mihail, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to our last speaker from Turkey, Mr. Tekin Bingöl.
Değerli Komite Başkanı, sayın meslektaşlarım, iklim değişikliği artık yalnızca çevresel bir mesele olmaktan çıkmış, küresel düzeyde insan hareketliliğini, ekonomik dengeleri ve uluslararası hukuku doğrudan etkileyen bir kriz haline gelmiştir. Önümüzdeki süreçte iklimin insanların yerinden edilmelerinin ana nedenlerinden biri olabileceği kabul edilmektedir. İklim göçü konusu bilimin önceliğini küresel ve bütünsel düşünmenin gerekliliğini bize hatırlatıyor. Doğa aslında bizim çizdiğimiz sınırları tanımıyor. Doğanın bir hafızası var, ondan aldığımızı bizden geri istiyor. Doğa kirliliği kabul etmiyor, bilim sınır, din ve ırk tanımıyor. O halde çözümde küresel düzeyde olmalı, ortak akıl ve işbirliği devreye girmelidir. Dünya çapında yaşanan su kıtlığı, sıcak artışları ile yükselen deniz seviyeleri, tarımsal üretimin azalması ve doğal afetlerin sıkıntısındaki artış, milyonlarca insanın yerinden edilmesi riskini ortaya çıkarmakta, Agit bölgesini de doğrudan ve dolaylı yoldan etkilemektedir. Özellikle Agit bölgesinde ve Akdeniz Havzası'nda yaşanan sıcaklık artışları, kırsal toplulukları göçe zorlamakta. Bu durum kentlerde altyapı sistemleri ve sosyal uyum üzerindeki baskıyı oluşturmaktadır. Türkiye gibi hem iklim krizinden doğrudan etkilenen hem de göç yolları üzerinde bulunan ülkeler için ise bu süreç dengeli ve kapsamlı bir politika ile gerektirmektedir. Bu noktada uluslararası sorumluluk meselesini de göz ardı edemeyiz. Küresel sera gazı emisyonlarının büyük bölümünün sanayileşmiş ülkeler tarafından üretildiği malumunuz. Bu nedenle gelişmiş ülkelerin iklim değişikliğini yarattığı insani ve ekonomik sonuçlara karşı daha fazla sorumluluk üstlenmesi gerekmektedir. Bizler parlamenterler olarak iklim değişikliğini yalnızca çevresel bir tehdit olarak değil, küresel güvenlik ve sürdürülebilir kalkınma açısından bir kırılma noktası olarak değerlendirmeliyiz. Gıda güvenliği, su kıtlığı ve doğal afetlerin tetiklediği toplumsal travmalar bölgesel istikrarı tehdit eden unsurlar haline gelmiştir. Bugün burada bölgesel ve uluslararası işbirliği nasıl güçlendirebileceğimizi tartışmalıyız. Ülkelerin iklim göçünü ulusal kalkınma planlarına entegre etmelerine acil ihtiyaç vardır. İklim göçü çoğunlukla kırsal bölgelerden kentsel bölgelere doğru yönelim taşımaktadır. Bu bölgelere yer değiştiren insanların ihtiyaçları için kapsamlı yasalara, politikalara ve stratejilere ihtiyaç duyulmaktadır. İklim değişikliği, kaynaklı göçün ölçeğini, doğasını ve büyüklüğünü daha iyi anlamak ve bağlamsallaştırmak için daha fazla yatırım gerekmektedir. Eğer bugün etkili ve kararlı adımlar atmazsak, gelecekte çok daha büyük insani krizlerle karşılaşacağımız kuşkusuzdur. Eğer bugün harekete geçersek, iklim değişikliği yerinden edilmeye zorlanan insanların sayısını azaltabilir, riskleri minimize edebilir ve daha dirençli toplumlar inşa edebilir ve emin kararlarla geleceğimizi şekillendirebiliriz. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much, dear Tekin, for your intervention. Dear colleagues, by that we have concluded the speaker list under this agenda item. And before closing this item, I would like to ask our distinguished speakers if they would like to take some minutes, maybe 1 or 2 maximum minutes, to make a comment on what has been said by our colleagues. So, Madam Cardoso, you have the floor. And then Ambassador Zupov and Madam Hersek, if you wish to take the floor, you feel free to ask. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Only to thank to all colleagues for the comments and the suggestions. I will pay attention to all what you have said. There are 3 or 4 suggestions that are great, and I will take them for the final report, portal, such as the agriculture. For France has mentioned that is more than ever an issue for the environment and for our development. The good question, how can we promote brain circulation from the young parliamentarians, and food security and other issues that some of our colleagues are making there, making here, and I will promise to pay good attention to all, because I have been taking my notes, and I appreciate all your contributions. Even the problem of nuclear energy that Ukraine has taken to us, which is in effect a dangerous and problematic issue, and we must pay attention to them. And the nuclear terrorism, it's another problem. All the reconstruction of the climate disasters we have seen in the last year, and financing this reconstruction is a good issue either. And thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you very much, Madam Cardoso. Now I'd like to ask Ambassador Zupov, if you want, please, you take the floor for some comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank all the parliamentarians for your inputs, for your interventions. We took note of the issues which you have raised in your interventions. Of course, as a secretariat, we will continue supporting participating states with the activities. First of all, of course, with providing a platform for the policy dialogue. We are guided by the Finnish chairpersonship. We are guided by the chair of the Economic and Environmental Committee, and of course we will continue those activities. The issues of the second dimension, the issues of the economic and environmental aspects of the security are very much crucial and very much relevant to what we are doing, to the goals of our organization, and we will continue with that. In terms of good economic governance, many issues were raised regarding the connectivity, anti-corruption. This is our core priority in economic governance unit. We will continue with that. Climate and the different aspects of the climate impact of the changing climate to the migration. This is the topic of our special debate. Of course, we will continue, as I outlined at the beginning, at the very beginning. Environmental cooperation, good environmental cooperation. We have many activities also in that aspect, and we will continue with those activities. Energy security was mentioned quite significant time. Of course, we see in this very challenging time, this issue is getting more and more emerging, and we have quite significant tools there. We are implementing different activities, mitigating climate change threats to the energy security. We have number of participating states already beneficiary, and we will continue, of course, with those activities. As I said at the beginning, assessment of the environmental impacts of the war against Ukraine, we will continue that now with more thematic briefs. It's hazardous waste, it's disaster risk preparedness, it's the water management, and we will continue, of course, with all the activities. But all in all, I would like to highlight once again that good cooperation we have with the second committee, and we will continue and looking forward for joint activities and joint cooperation to address the challenges on the second dimension. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Zubov. Now I'd like to give the floor to Madam Herceg, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would also like to thank for all your interesting and valuable contributions. We are assured by listening to you that the list of topics which we have foreseen for the work of the Economic and Environment Committee are the right ones, and we are on the right path. I think this discussion was really timely for us because we are finalizing our work program, and we will take good note of your comments. And last but not least, we look forward to our fruitful cooperation. And thank you again.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I also want to thank on behalf of our committee to both of you, Ambassador Zubov and Madam Herceg. Of course, looking forward to continuing our good cooperation. As you mentioned, Madam Herceg, it is really great opportunity for us when the both sides, parliamentarians and the executive branch, are coming together and making common efforts and doing joint project, joint events, of course, combining common efforts for the sake of our people that we represent. Thank you very much again for your availability, and looking forward to our future cooperation. Thank you. Dear colleagues, now I would like to move on to our next item, which is about the special debate on climate migration in the OECD region. Dear colleagues, over the past decades, climate change has emerged as one of the most pressing challenges influencing not only environmental but also social, economic, and political affairs across all our regions. For example, in Central Asia, water shortages and desertification have exacerbated tensions over shared water resources. The drying up of the Aral Sea, which is worsened by climate change, remains one of the most serious environmental disasters, displacing communities that depend on fishing and agriculture. In Southern Europe, prolonged droughts and wildfires over the last years have led to a loss of agricultural productivity and forced rural population to migrate to urban areas. The increasing frequency of heat waves in Central Europe has led to rising energy demand for cooling, putting additional pressure on infrastructure. At the same time, we all witnessed the devastating flooding in September 2024, which affected Austria, Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia, followed by another calamitous flooding in Spain in October 2024. Similarly, the wildfires in California this January, which took dozens of lives, forced hundreds of thousands to evacuate, and destroyed thousands of homes and structures, are part of broader trend of escalating climate-related events frequency and intensity worldwide. All these events severely impacted residential areas, businesses, and critical infrastructures, illustrating how even highly developed urban centers are vulnerable to extreme weather events, and tragically, they also claim lives. Not surprisingly, climate-induced migration has become a daily reality we are confronted with, as millions of people are forced to leave their homes and seek fortune elsewhere due to the climate change. New challenges arise. Challenges that need to be addressed through cooperative approaches in the OECD area to enhance climate resilience, mitigate risk, and adapt to new realities. Governments and societies must shift from reactive crisis management to proactive and long-term approach. Only through a combination of strong prevention efforts and smart adaptation strategies, we can mitigate the destruction and build resilience against future climate-related events. Against this backdrop, the OECPA has not remained idle. Our Assembly has consistently emphasized the link between climate change and migration and their implications for global security. The 2014 Baku Declaration stressed how climate change, resources conflicts, and displacement of people are intertwined. The 2022 Birmingham Declaration underscored the rise in climate-induced migration and called for greater cooperation to address this issue. Both the 2023 Vancouver and 2024 Bucharest declarations called for effective and sustainable migration governance in response to climate-induced displacement. Our 22nd OECPA autumn meeting held last October in Dublin marked a special session dedicated to addressing the climate crisis, the role of MPs in fulfilling global commitments ahead of COP29. Moreover, ahead of COP29, OECPA Vice President and Special Representative on Climate Change presented a timely parliamentary call to global action in response to climate change. The document underscored the vital link between climate change, security, and migration, calling for urgent interventions by all participating states. I applaud the efforts of Mr. Perepos in this context. Similarly, our ad hoc committee on migration has consistently explored the humanitarian and security challenges associated with irregular migration, as well as the benefits that can arise from enhanced, coordinated, coherent, and human migration governance. This occurred through targeted visits to hotspots, sharing the best practices, and by developing comprehensive policy guidance. Hence, as climate-related challenges intensify, the OECPA continues to play a crucial role in advocating for effective legislative responses and multi-stakeholder engagement to mitigate those growing risks. Affected communities and civil society are key actors in this context. Well-designed policy framework provide the foundation for addressing climate-induced migration effectively, ensuring that the rights and needs of migrants are protected while also fostering sustainable development. I look forward to discussing these issues with our guest speakers. I would now like to warmly welcome Professor Patrick Sackler-Pollock, who is Professor of Population Geography and Demography, University of Vienna, and Research Scholar in the World Population Program at the International Institute for Applied System Analysis. He has studied geography and development research in Heidelberg and Wollongong, Australia, and received his doctorate degree at Bonn University. Professor Sackler-Pollock, I look forward to your insights in relation to the dimension of the phenomenon, as well as its political, economic, and social impact. Of course, your policy proposals are also very welcome. Please, Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Could the presentation be put up? Mr. Chairman, honorable parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank the organizers of this meeting for granting me the opportunity to share my perspective on this issue. It's a great honor to be here. The title of my brief input here is Climate Migration, Understanding the Crisis and Shaping the Response. I would like to convey three kind of key messages to you this afternoon. First, climate change is already reshaping human mobility. As we have heard already, it has been confirmed that 2024 was the hottest year on record. Climate change is not a distant threat, it's a present reality. The increasing severity and frequency of extreme weather events, rising temperatures, already affects millions worldwide. This impact threatens the well-being and human security of vulnerable population, not only in the global south. According to the IPCC, there is no doubt that climate change influences migration patterns already today and will continue to do so in future. But the relationship between climate change and migration is complex. Climate change does not cause migration in a straightforward and uniform way. The terms climate migration can be misleading, suggesting only a simplistic and direct link. Alarmist narratives about billions of people moving to the global north are not only inaccurate, but also unhelpful in developing effective solutions. And lastly, we must take a broader approach to migration in the context of climate change. We need to go beyond the focus on displacement and forced migration alone. Human mobility interacts with climate change in diverse ways. And migration should not only be seen as a crisis, but also as a potential for adaptive solutions. Let me briefly address, we have heard many examples today already, why it's important to talk about climate migration. Recent events have demonstrated profound impact climate change can have on human mobility. One of the most striking examples is the recurring drought in the Horn of Africa, which regularly forced a large number of people to leave their homes in search for food and shelter. However, climate displacement is not limited to low-income countries. Wealthier nations, including OSCE member states, are also vulnerable. The catastrophic flooding in Germany, Ahr Valley in 2021, my home country, displaced, according to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, 16,000 people, claimed 180 lives, and caused an estimated 20 billion in damages. Lastly, the link between climate change and migration is often emphasized due to the sheer scale of the projected displacement. For instance, a widely cited report warned that up to 1 billion people could be displaced by climate change by the year 2100. Numbers play a significant role in the discussion about climate change and migration. They are often used to highlight the urgency and importance of the issue and its potential security implications. However, these figures should be used with extreme caution. Estimates of 200 to 300 million climate migrants by the year 2050 continue to circulate in public and policy debates. However, most of these projections, as can be seen in this chart, rely on a small number of original sources which are heavily criticized. There's a broad scientific consensus that early estimates of climate migration lacked a strong empirical basis and were at best rough guesstimates. While improved data and modeling over the past decades have advanced the field, a recent review still describes these projections as largely speculative. The most comprehensive attempt to model climate migration on a more global scale comes from the World Bank's Groundswell report, which focuses on internal migration, since most climate-related migration will occur in national borders. Although the widely cited figure is 260 million people, internal climate migrants by the year 2050, the actual projections, if you look into the report, ranges from 50 million under climate-friendly scenarios to 260 million in worst-case scenarios. The high level of uncertainty are reflected in the wide range of outcomes of this projection. Numbers in this debate are often used to serve specific interest. While some organizations cite them to advocate urgent climate action, the approach has the potential to be counterproductive. As weak scientific backing undermines credibility of climate science, inflated numbers fuel fear and xenophobia, reinforce harmful anti-immigrant sentiments in many parts of the world, and apocalyptic narratives oversimplify the complex issue. As illustrated in this figure illustrates the complexity of the relationship between climate change and migration. The key idea is that migration is already happening and is driven by multiple factors, including social, political, demographic, economic drivers. Climate and environmental change influence these factors and interact with them. Additionally, personal characteristics affect migration decision, as do external obstacles and facilitators like political and legal frameworks, social networks, border policies. Ultimately, the decision to migrate or to stay results from the interplay of all these factors, which are highly context-specific and result in high uncertainties with regard to future projections and forecasts. The complexity of climate migration also extends to its evaluation. Is it good or bad? Is it a success or a failure? Migration can indicate failed adaptation when livelihood collapses, leaving people with no choice but to leave. However, it can also be a sign of successful adaptation. For example, when households under stress send members away to earn income, which is then sent back to support and stabilize the family. The same applies to immobility or not moving. It can signal failed adaptation when people are trapped, unable to move to cope with stress, leading to worsening conditions. Conversely, the ability to remain in place despite exposure to the risks can reflect high adaptive capacity. In my view, the key factor in addressing migration as a success or a failure is the degree of freedom and choice people have in deciding whether to stay or to move. The complexity also refers to the need to move beyond the sole focus on climate-related displacement and migration. This is shown in these boxes. The first row highlights types of mobility linked to extreme weather events. This is what we normally imagine when we think about climate migration. But we also need to consider displacement of local population due to consequences of climate mitigation adaptation efforts. The second row focuses on mobile population who are often particularly vulnerable to climate change due to pre-existing socioeconomic vulnerabilities. And the third row illustrates forms of human mobility that can actively support climate adaptation and mitigation efforts. These can refer to the role of diaspora in climate adaptation financing or the need for skilled labor migrants for the green transitions of our economies. The relevance of these different mobility patterns depend on national, subnational, and local contexts. To address these challenges, to address the challenges of climate migration effectively, we must consider three key priorities. First, we need to strengthen the capacity of vulnerable population to adapt. This means ensuring that individuals and communities have the freedom to decide whether to stay or to move. Adaptation policies should empower people and prevent distressed migration as a last resort. But we also need to take into account the limits of adaptation and be prepared for the loss of habitabilities in certain areas. Second, we must place human security at the center of our approach, regardless where people are and if they are on the move or not. Migration often comes with heightened risks, and we must acknowledge these specific vulnerabilities of migrants, both during their journeys and in their destination places. Protecting their rights and well-being is essential. And finally, we should make migration work for adaptation. Rather than viewing migration only as a problem, we must recognize its potential to enhance resilience. At the national level, every state can mainstream human mobility into climate change planning by integrating it into nationally determined contributions or national adaptation plans. Recognizing the relevance of different forms of mobility in these frameworks is essential. Members of my research team co-led the publication of this technical guide on mainstreaming migration to national adaptation plans. And some countries have already systematically incorporated migration into their national adaptation plans, providing valuable benchmarks for others to follow. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your interesting presentation. I really found it very much interesting, useful, and I hope that it will help us to understand more what is the main link between climate change and migration. You have shown many interesting facts. Thank you very much. I hope that you will have a time to stay with us until the end of the session. Now I'd like to give the floor to our friend, Pere Pons, who is a vice president of the OECPA, as well as the special representative of the climate change. Pere, as you know, has been doing some efforts for the last 1 or 2 years in order to boost the agenda of the Assembly on climate change. As I said, he attended for the first time Baku COP29 as OEC has gained the status of observation. Now, it would be interesting, Peter, to listen to your opinion, how you can see the role of the OEC Parliamentary Assembly in this crucial momentum and on this crucial topic. Please, you have the floor.
So, first of all, thank you, Azai, for the invitation, for being able to take part to this session. And maybe I would start with one thing, is that in the last years, I think that the Parliamentary Assembly was able to put climate on the agenda here internally. I think this is one of the big successes of the organization. And then I think more and more, we are more visible and present, let's say, externally. And the fact that we were able as an organization to be in Baku in the last COP29 is also an example of this capacity to be more and more visible and present. And as the lady from France was asking, how we can be present, how we can be more visible. So this would be my first point, that we have to be more present internally. We have to put it on the agenda at a higher level. And the second thing is be visible in all the fora in which we can take part. Because in the end, we have a huge network, more than 323 parliamentarians, 57 countries. So we are really, we can really make the difference. Second thing that I would like to say, just to talk a little bit about my country, about Spain and my region that I represent. Just the figures, because we are speaking about people when we talk about migration. In Spain, we had 69,970 irregular migrants last year. And then 2008, 78 minors under the age of 18. So this is the figure. This is the figure. In my region, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative if you let me, my region is, I would say, very known because we are a very touristic region, Mallorca, Ibiza, Formentera, and Menorca. We received 51 boats last year, crowded of irregular migrants, I would say migrants, persons with rights and a lot of dignity. But let me challenge you a little bit. We had 18 million tourists all over the world at the same time. This paradox of the satisfied and the non-satisfied. The satisfied coming to the islands on nice flights and these 51 boats coming. So I think this is the most important thing because what our colleague said, when I first talked about climate migration was in 2002 in Geneva, talking about bilateral aid and on the ground. By the way, if you don't have bilateral aid, if you don't support bilateral aid, it's very difficult to reduce climate impact. It's very tough to reduce migration. And of course, you don't know nothing about what is going on the ground. Because the first pillar of the foreign policy is a good cooperation on the ground. But anyway, in 2002, we were talking about the impact of climate change on the populations in Africa. So when I was in Washington in the US elections, I was there totally shocked, reading at the Washington Post, the first page, the photo of Valencia, the floods in my country. So what is the corollary? What is the conclusion? Is that the difference between 2002 and now is that this problem, as one of the speakers said, is not just the problem of the others. It's our problem as well. Our problem as well. Third point, I would say that migration, and I would like to listen, migration is not a threat. Migration is managed, but it's not a threat. Climate change is a threat. It's a global threat. And the populations that have to migrate they have a double punishment because they are suffering already of lack of education, lack of public health, lack of food, and then they have the second double punishment. So this is something that we have to tackle. So we need, in the end, a multilateral response to that. So my first, because I don't want to speak too much. What again the colleague from France said. What is the response? My first response would be that we need more political will. Unfortunately, still we need more political will. By the way, link it to the green transition. If you read the Draghi report, please read it. It's impossible to be more competitive, to be more, let's say, it's impossible to compete with China and the US without an energetic and green transition. So please, when we talk about the contradiction about growth and green transition, read the Draghi report. No progress without green transition. Sorry, this is what Draghi says. And by the way, more investment, more innovation, and social Europe. So this is more political will. And the second point, or the third recommendation, you cannot divide climate, security, and migration. It's a package. So I would say that there will be no global security without climate security. This is so obvious, but we are talking about global security. No climate security, no global security. By the way, if you decide to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, it's going to be very difficult to tackle migration, and it's going to be very difficult to tackle climate change. So good luck for your countries as well. So we'll see. And solutions, more funding. This is what is going to be discussed in Brazil. More funding, development of the action plans at national level. We are all part of the solution. It's easier to say that we are all part of the problem, but no, we are all part of the solution. So let's invest more political will, and then something that already was said, and I will end with this. The European Parliament already said that there is no status for climate refugees. I think that we are talking about fundamental rights. So we need to find solutions as an assembly to help to provide a status of protection to these populations, to these people, because if not, there is a lack, there is a huge lack. So again, I think migration is not a threat. Climate change is a threat because it's a global threat. We need more political will. We need more funding, of course. And I will end with that because I think it's a time to say it. It's very sad to see how attacking migrants and also attacking scientists saying that there is a climate crisis is also one of the new political tools of the populism. So I think it would be interesting because before we commit suicide, that we stop this process of disinformation regarding migration and the climate change. So thank you very much, Azai, for your time.
Thank you very much, dear Pierre. I fully agree with you when you said that if there is no political will, it is impossible to combat against this, I would say, phenomenon, climate change. And to be honest, when we have had the discussions with our International Secretariat, Marco, Daria, and our rapporteur, Paula, to determine the topic for the for the winter session, we had a long debate, but ultimately we came into the conclusion that this is one of the most relevant topics that we need to really address and have a debate and to try to get some feedback from our distinguished members. This is why I do believe that, Paula, it is good for us to know about the really alarming issue stemming from that topic. And definitely, I agree with Pierre, we have to have our say, our political stance on that issue and to deliver our position in Porto in the resolution that you are going to prepare. Thank you very much, dear Pere. Of course, there will be some comments and some intervention from our colleagues. I'm looking forward to hearing other points. Dear colleagues, now I'd like to thank our good friend, Madame Daniela De Ridder, who has been chairing very successfully the Migration After Committee for a couple of years. I know very well that Daniela always put forward the questions related to migration, how to manage in the best way in order not to harm both the interests of people as well as the migration or rights of migrants. So I know it is very, very difficult job, dear Daniela. Please take a floor, despite the fact that you have already delivered your interesting speech, but of course I can't leave you without any introduction before starting the debate. So would you like to add something that you have already delivered, but your input and your, of course, opinion also very much interesting in shaping our future position when it comes to the draft resolution. Please, Daniela, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, dear Azai, Excellencies, dear colleagues. Migrants were invisible in the climate agenda until the United Nations Framework Convention recognized the growing importance of human mobility with the adaptation of two COP decisions on climate-induced migration, displacement, and planned relocation. In 2018, the UN adopted the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, a non-binding agreement that includes objective focused on developing adaptation and resilience strategies for communities affected by climate change. Despite the growing recognition of climate-induced migration, significant gaps remain in its conceptualization, structuring, and legal recognition. One major challenge is the absence of a universally accepted definition of climate refugees. I already mentioned it. Still, the absence of the binding legal framework continues to hinder the effective protection of climate migrants. As a result, climate migrants may be eligible to receiving protection only when the causes of their displacement intersects with other legal and human rights violation, as exemplified before. Another policy challenge is linked to the difficulty of quantifying the number of individuals displaced by climate change. This further complicates the process of developing comprehensive protection frameworks tailored to different types of climate-induced displacement. In 2008, 20 million persons were displaced by extreme weather events. Gradual changes in the environmental, such as desertification and rising sea level, which exacerbate resource scarcities and foster conflict over water access, posing direct threats to food security and livelihood, tend to have a greater impact. Future forecasts place the number of environmental migrants between 25 million and 1 billion by 2050. Dear colleagues, both within countries and across borders, with 200 million being the most widely cited estimated. I repeat, by the year 2050, there could be over 100 million refugees due to climate change. The reason, the expansion of climate change on people's existence is so serious that there is no other perspective than flight. When the Migration Committee last year visited the hotspot Lampedusa, we learned that numerous climate refugees came from Bangladesh, even to Italy, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Sudan and South Sudan. At the same time, these countries take the most internal refugees. Weather extremes are increasingly becoming the cause of hunger and poverty. When climatic changes increase and cause crops to fail and extreme weather events destroy habitats, how can we, and this is one of the main questions we should discuss, how can we combat the causes of flight? We can just tinker, in my view, we just can tinker with symptoms. We need a holistic approach. With fair trade relations, a solidarity-based and fair financial, economic, and environmental policy, we must create short, medium, and long-term strategies for crisis and conflict management. I suggest that we work more closely with our Mediterranean Forum and expand cooperation, for example, with ECOWAS and the African Union. It is not a good path, anyway, if the budget for development cooperation are cut in large parts. Please let me also emphasize that climate migration has a gender aspect as well. Did you know, dear colleagues, that according to a Swedish study, men spend on average around 2% more money than women when it comes to personal consumption, but cause around 60% more harmful emissions. On the other hand, we also need to know that women as climate refugees are exposed to an increased risk of violence, especially sexual violence. In the resolution already named by you and adopted in last year in Bucharest, we emphasize the importance of recognizing the diversity of causes forced migration, including natural disasters and climate change. We strongly urge states to strengthen cooperation with countries of origin and transition on environmental protection and the fight against climate change. By adopting a proactive, as I said, proactive research-based and cooperative approach, we can develop effective policies that protect vulnerable population as children, minors, women, and enhance global resilience to climate change in our OSCE region. Thank you, Azai.
Thank you very much, dear Daniela. As far as understood, you made great speech in first time and the second time, but you tried to combine. I really appreciate. Whatever you have said, of course, it is the ultimate goal of the Assembly and also the committee to address the issues that we have a common concern. And of course, as I said before, it is main prerogative for our rapporteur to put this challenging issue in her report. And of course, despite the fact that it is true that we have addressed this issue in our previous administrations, but we have to keep saying the same. If it is necessary, we have to keep repeating our position unless we are heard. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to open the debates for this item. We have 8 speakers in our list, and if you don't mind, I would like to ask again to stick to 2 minutes. I know that there is some exception, but try to limit to 2 minutes, and we have a countdown on the screen. You will follow and try to manage your time limit. So first speaker is Ms. Hanna Lichtman from Ukraine. She will be followed. No? It is okay, but your name is here. Okay. Okay, then we go to Ms. Maya Bitadze of Georgia. She will be followed by Christos Senekis of Cyprus. So, Madam Bitadze, you have the floor. Are you here?
Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, it's an honor to speak before the esteemed Assembly today on the issue that touches the very core of human dignity, regional security, and our shared future, eco-migration. As a representative of Georgia, I come before you to highlight the urgent need to address the intersection of climate change, migration, and security within the OSCE region. In Georgia, the impact of climate change is already undeniable. In recent years, a number of extreme weather events, such as floods, droughts, wildfires, has risen by over 30%. Our agricultural sector, which supports nearly 50% of our rural population, is severely threatened. However, we have also made significant strides in adapting to these challenges. Georgia is trying to invest in climate-resilient agriculture and is actively implementing policies to promote sustainable land management. We are working closely with international partners to build green infrastructure and to improve early warning system to mitigate climate-related risks. This environmental pressure does not exist in a vacuum. As people migrate in search of more stable lives, tension can rise and security risks increase. The OSCE, as a leading organization in peace and security, must address eco-migration as a cross-cutting issue that demands coordinated action from all member states. Let me be clear. Eco-migration is not just an environmental challenge. It is a security challenge, a challenge that demands a robust, collaborative response. The OSCE must lead the way by strengthening frameworks that protect vulnerable communities, promote sustainable development, and ensure that the rights of migrants are upheld. Georgia stands ready to collaborate, sharing our experiences and learning from others to build a more secure, sustainable, and resilient region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Pitadze. Now, our next speaker is Mr. Christos Sinekis of Cyprus. He will be followed by Ms. Diloram Feyzieva of Uzbekistan. Mr. Sinekis, please, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, the impact of climate change on migration patterns is very well documented by the research community. As we all know, climate change is already a present reality that is already reshaping our world. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and desertification are creating conditions in many regions of the world that make life increasingly difficult and, in some cases, unsustainable. As a result, millions of people are being forced to leave their homes in search of safer and more stable environments. And this is a key issue with climate migration. As climate change impacts economies, prosperities, and livelihoods, as it renders water resources a possible source of conflict within or between states, it means that climate change does not produce only migrants, but also refugees. The Sudanese civil war, as well as conflicts in the Middle East over control of water resources, are eloquent examples. The Mediterranean's proximity to these regions is setting us up for renewed influxes of climate migrants and refugees. As a bottom line, I believe that investment in combating climate change will also improve adaptation and resilience building of societies in water-scarce regions. It's a topic that demands our attention, not only because of its immediate humanitarian implications, but because of the broader long-term consequences for our economies, our security, and social cohesion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Madam Diloram Feyzieva from Uzbekistan. She will be followed by Mr. Mikhail Muratori of San Marino. Madam Feyzieva, please, you have the floor.
Спасибо большое. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Я хотела бы поблагодарить всех докладчиков за те идеи, которые сегодня были озвучены. Действительно, сегодня докладчиками было отмечены современные экологические проблемы, экономические проблемы, которые назрели в Центральноазиатском регионе. И я хотела бы особо отметить прошлом году была делегация парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ в центральноазиатских странах, в Казахстане, у нас в Узбекистане, в Туркменистане, и была разработаны пункты к Бухарестской резолюции, где было сказано, что в резолюции была подчеркнута совершенствование регионального сотрудничества, в том числе в парламентском измерении, и создание надежных региональных механизмов для эффективного решения вопросов, связанных с изменением климата, водными ресурсами и ухудшением состояния окружающей среды в регионе Центральной Азии. И мне хотелось бы сказать, что за последнее время в Центральной Азии идет действительно консолидация усилий, и лидеры наших стран, и наши правительства, наши парламенты в этом направлении сегодня сотрудничают достаточно активно. Но в то же время я хочу сказать, что у нас есть вот это двустороннее сотрудничество, есть многосторонние платформы, у нас есть форум парламентов центральноазиатских стран, где мы обсуждаем эти вопросы. Но в то же время нам необходимо сегодня выработать конкретные практические шаги. Что нам необходимо делать? Нам необходимо задействовать эффективные механизмы парламентского сотрудничества в этом вопросе. И здесь мы видим, что очень важно нам сотрудничать с парламентской ассамблеей ОБСЕ, с бюро и со специальным представителем по Центральной Азии парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ в дальнейшем для развития парламентской дипломатии в этом направлении. И сейчас, пользуясь случаем, я хотела бы поблагодарить всех тех коллег, которые проработали эту резолюцию, и наших коллег из Казахстана и Киргизстана, которые участвуют в этой деятельности. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much, Madam Fezeva. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Muratori of San Marino, and he will be followed by Mr. Danila Tolonov of Kyrgyzstan. Mikhail, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear President, dear colleagues. Today we are facing one of the most urgent challenges of our time. Extreme events such as flood, drought, and rising sea level are no longer a distant concern, but a growing reality. People forced to migrate due to climate change are not just economic migrants, but victims of a global emergency that require an immediate response. For the OSCE, climate migration is not only about managing migration flow, but also about regional security and stability. As displaced population increase, pressure on natural resources, such as water and food, grow with the risk of generating conflict and instability. We must recognize that climate migration is linked to issue of social justice and sustainable development. OSCE member states, with their experience in conflict management and regional cooperation, have a crucial role to play. We must work together to reduce greenhouse gas emission, invest in renewable energy, and prevent further environment disaster. At the same time, it is essential to support vulnerable community with climate adaptation policies, ensuring they can cope with environment challenges. The OSCE can promote cooperation among states and provide technical support to the most affected regions. Finally, climate migrants must be protected by an adequate international legal framework. The OSCE has a responsibility to raise awareness about the need to develop regulation that guarantee the protection of this individual, possibly through a multilateral agreement that provide temporary protection. In conclusion, climate migration is a reality that can no longer be ignored. It requires a collective, responsible and human response. By strengthening cooperation and focusing on adaptation, we can prevent further destabilization and turn this challenge into an opportunity for peace and cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Muratori, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor Mr. Daniyar Tolonov of Kyrgyzstan. He will be followed by Mr. Moshe Solomon of Israel. Mr. Tolonov, please, you have the floor.
Спасибо. Уважаемый председатель, уважаемые коллеги, сегодня мы являемся свидетелями того, что изменение климата становится одной из наиболее значимых причин вынужденной миграции населения во всем мире, включая страны региона ОБСЕ. Экологические изменения затрагивают различные сферы жизни, включая сельское хозяйство, водные ресурсы, жилищные условия и безопасность населения. Рост числа экстремальных погодных явлений, такие как засуха, наводнения, лесные пожары и штормы, а также постепенная деградация природных экосистем вынуждает людей покидать свои дома в поисках более безопасных и стабильных условий жизни. Когда рассматривается вопрос миграции, то надо взвесить все стороны равномерно. Прежде всего, легальная миграция, ее плюсы, то есть мигранты покрывают потребность рынка труда страны пребывания. Кроме этого, они перечисляют заработанные деньги, поддерживая свои семьи. В этом контексте Кыргызстан не исключение. Наши граждане тоже работают и учатся во многих странах мира, что считается своеобразной инвестицией. Многие из них, находясь в развитых странах, накапливают определенный опыт и знания, которых впоследствии используют для развития экономики своей страны. На сегодняшний день правительством Кыргызской Республики принимаются соответствующие меры для поддержки наших мигрантов разных концепций миграционной политики на 2021-2030 года. Прилагаются целенаправленные усилия по стабилизации миграционных процессов и смягчению факторов, вызывающих миграционный поток путем реализации конкретных государственных социально-экономических программ. Особо хочется отметить, что буквально 27 августа 2024 года президентом Кыргызской Республики подписан указ о согласии с внешнеполитической инициативой Министерства труда, социального обеспечения и миграции Кыргызской Республики о присоединении к глобальному договору о безопасной, упорядоченной и легальной миграции. Это важный шаг является ярким свидетельством приверженности Кыргызской Республики международным стандартам и принципам. Кроме этого, наша страна стремится к интеграции в глобальную миграционную систему, основанную на уважении прав человека и принципов гуманности. Уважаемые коллеги, к сожалению, можно также констатировать рост незаконной миграции, которым происходит нарушение правовых норм принимающих стран, устанавливающих порядок въезда, транзитного проезда, пребывания и выезда из страны иностранных граждан. Зачастую этому способствуют различные преступные группы, занимающиеся незаконным ввозом мигрантов и получающих от таких действий преступные доходы. Таким образом, рост незаконных перемещений вызывает обеспокоенность во всех странах мира, так как влечет за собой ряд негативных последствий и угроз для общества и государства в целом. Повышается уровень криминализации общества вследствие наличия среди мигрантов, скрывающихся от законов, связанных с нелегальным ввозом мигрантов, а также сопутствующим правонарушением торговли людьми, оружием, наркобизнес, терроризм. В целях устранения таких негативных аспектов необходимо скоординированные действия со стороны правоохранительных органов, как в национальном, так и на международном уровне, так как только совместные меры дадут должный эффект по сравнению с действиями отдельных государств. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much, dear Tolonov, for your intervention. Now I'm about to give the floor to our last speaker, who is Mr. Moshe Solomon of Israel. Please, Mr. Solomon, you have the floor.
An English translation will follow.
אדוני יושב-ראש הוועדה, מר גוליאב, מכובדיי כולם, במושב זה אנחנו רגילים להתייחס אל ישראל במסגרת הדיונים על המצב במזרח התיכון, ובדרך כלל בהקשרי מלחמה. אולם אני רוצה להאיר זרקור דווקא לסדר יום חיובי, לתחומים הנוגעים יותר לנושא הליבה של הארגון לביטחון ולשיתוף פעולה באירופה, ובאופן ספציפי לדיון במושב זה, דהיינו קריאה לשיתוף פעולה אזורי. מדינות אירופה ואסיה התיכונה יכולות לשתף פעולה יחד עם מדינת ישראל ושאר מדינות הים התיכון בתחומים כלכליים ואזרחיים, בדרכם להידרש לאתגרים אזוריים ולפתור בעיות אזוריות ובראשן סוגיית ההגירה. מדינת ישראל החלה כמדינה חקלאית, בתחילת דרכה יצאה תפוזים. מהר מאוד ישראל הבינה שעדיף לפתח את הטכנולוגיה לגידול תפוזים מאשר לשווק את התפוזים עצמם. היום ישראל היא מעצמה בתחום הטכנולוגיה המודרנית, חדשנות ויזמות. חדשנות נוגעת בכל תחום של חיינו, תזונה, רפואה, חקלאות, ניידות ועוד, כאשר ישראל הינה פורצת דרך בתחומים הללו. רק לאחרונה פורבס דירג את ישראל ב10 המדינות החזקות בעולם, זה בזכות הובלתה בתחומי חדשנות וטכנולוגיה. ישראל יכולה לשתף בניסיונה, ללמוד מאחרים ולשתף פעולה עם מדינות המרחב. בישראל יש כיום כ10,000 סטארט-אפים טכנולוגיים, ואנחנו מייצאים לעולם פתרונות לאתגרים הגלובליים. יותר מזון וביטחון המזון, באגרוטק ופודטק, יותר בריאות, ביטחון, סייבר, תעשייה מתקדמת ועוד. אם ניקח את תחום החקלאות כדוגמה, לישראל ניסיון עשיר בפיתוח טכנולוגיות המשרתות את ענפי החקלאות וסוגיהם, ממערכות השקיה מודרניות, ניהול מים דרך גידולי בקר לחלב ולבשר, ועד לפיתוח זני עגבניות שרי. אם פעם חשבו שנושא המים יביא למלחמה הבאה במזרח התיכון, הרי שבאמצעות טכנולוגיות של התפלה, מחזור וטיהור, ישראל פתרה את בעיית המים. וכעת מעבירה מים לירדן ולפלסטינים. ישראל הפכה עצמאית בניהול משק המים שלה, וכבר לא תלויה במשאבי מים טבעיים. בהינתן מצב של האקלים, בשנים האחרונות העלו לא מעט בחברי מספר מדינות קשיים שעימם מתמודדת מדינותיהם בתחומים אלו. אנו מושיטים יד לעזרה להן וגם למדינות שאולי אינן נמנות על המעגל הראשון שלנו. סייענו למדינות גם במקרה אסון כגון רעידות אדמה שהותירו תוצאות מחרידות. לבסוף אני רוצה לציין את האנשים ששותפים לתוכניות האלו, בין היתר גדי מוזס. גדי נכתב לעזה ב7 באוקטובר לאחר שעבד שנים רבות בגידולים חקלאיים בקיבוץ ניר עוז, והשתתף בהכשרות חקלאיות רבות מטעם מדינת ישראל, ובעיקר אצל ידידינו בגיאורגיה. גדי מוזס הוא בן 80, ולמרות התעללות ועינויים קשים בשבי החמאס, הבטיח לאחר חזרתו מהשבי שהוא ישקם מחדש את הקיבוץ ממנו הוא בא, ימשיך לפתח בחקלאות ויהיה מוכן לסייע גם לשכנינו בבניית חקלאות. זוהי הרוח שאנחנו מבקשים להציג בפני הנוכחים באולם זה. ביהדות יש עיקרון של תיקון עולם, יחד נפעל לתיקון עולם. תודה רבה.
Translation, we're used to talk about Israel and different issues in this discussions, but now we would like to actually have a positive one. With the serious droughts in Europe and in Central Asia in recent years needs to bring countries to work together. Israel began as an agricultural country and learned very quickly that it's better to work on technology of developing oranges than just selling them. Today, Israel grew to become one of the greatest, not only export of agriculture, but also of technological agriculture, food tech, with more than 10,000 startups. So if we take this experience and work together, we can deal with many of the issues raised in today's debate, whether it's irrigation systems, water management, and which will subsequently lead to work and reduce the need for immigration. And water management is an exact reason for it. In the past, they would argue that the war in the Middle East will be due to water shortage. Today, Israel is completely independent from water problems due to desalination and provides water to its neighboring country, Jordan. In these conditions, we can work together on the technologies with all the countries in need. Countries in recent years have raised exactly these issues. This is exactly what can help prevent immigration via water shortages or inner immigration to major cities because of drying countrysides. Let's build this together. And finally, I want to mention an 80-year-old person, Gadi Moses, who just returned 3 weeks ago from being hostage in Gaza Strip and promised his captors that when there'll be peace, he will educate them to work with water and in agriculture. He worked for many years in Georgia, helping exactly in these fields. And this is exactly the spirit we want to further in this place.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, as I already mentioned, it was our last speaker, and by that we conclude the speaker list under this agenda item. But before closing this item, I'd like to ask our distinguished speakers whether they like to make some comment on what has been said by our colleagues. And maybe we start from Professor Satropoulou. Please, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a few points, won't take a long time. First of all, it's encouraging to see that all contributions acknowledge the importance of the issue, climate change and migration. This is not put into question in this forum. It's something that needs to be said these days. The second point is, and I think this is the most important sentence I would like to repeat from Mr. Pons, that migration is not the threat, it's climate change. And I think we should all always remind this sentence. There's a need for cooperation, also for international development cooperation, to help people to adapt worldwide and to speed up green transition. And we need also, this was mentioned several times, to address the protection gap that is still there when it comes to climate-related displacement. And the last point I would like to highlight also as a scientist here is the point that Ms. De Ridder highlighted. She emphasized the importance of climate research to provide the evidence for decision makers and for policy makers. And the basis to provide sound scientific evidence is the freedom of science, academic freedom, which is under threat in many parts of the world. Attacking and defunding climate science will impede our ability to address the challenges that lie ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Professor. Now, Pere, please, you have the floor. If you want to add something, please.
I will be very brief because it's very late. I wanted to underline what my dear colleague from Uzbekistan said. In the end, I think we are all here, all of us, to catalyze change. That's the point. It's true that today multilateralism is not, let's say, very sexy, we would say, no? It's a very difficult time for multilateralism, but still, what it was mentioned before about the fact that we were in the COP29. This is the fact. I think this is the fact. It's not because we were in the COP29, but we were able to be there because we were doing things and we are cooperating more. And of course we can do more. And we have to be, I think one of the main challenges now is to be creative. In the years to come, we need to be very, very creative. And it's also, how do you say it? In French, you say audace, very challenging. We have to really be out of the box and be able to create new partnerships, etc. But in the end, the most important thing is that we are already catalyzing change, and we have to do more. That's for sure. And then the other thing that the colleague from Georgia said is that this is a security challenge. That's it. It's not only about migrants, it's about a security challenge which is linked to climate. And as I said before, it is true that migration is not the threat. Migration is a permanent reality that we'll have in the future, in the present, and what is the threat is climate change. And I think we assimilate. This is one thing that it's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Pere. Yeah, I think Daniela also would like to take some time, but before giving the floor to her, I'd like to emphasize what you said, Pere, about the multilateralism or multilateral approach to the issue that we are discussing now. Without that, of course, it's impossible. We need to have a holistic approach to the climate change, to many other challenging issues that really affect our daily life. So there is no doubt, but I think it is one of the challenging issues that OECPA should have deal with that. So Daniel, maybe you start because you also posed this issue.
Very brief as well, Diaz. I think, yes, what Michele mentioned is that migration due to climate change is a reality. And even if it's ignored by some populists, it's a reality and we have to deal with it. So secondly, I would say we have to expand our view on the countries of origin where migrants come from and see what they have to face and what they have to manage. And certainly we don't have to neglect all the social impacts on climate migration. That means that we also have to deal with gender, with demography, as you mentioned, and also with different generation. I think we have to enlarge our view and to have a broader approach to this, to these issues, and we have to deal with it. But we are those who can do that because we have our dialogue platform who's based on respect and responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Daniela. Of course, we have to conclude by that our item number 4 in our agenda. Of course, I would like to thank all our speakers, all our colleagues for their interesting intervention and exchange, and also for their great contribution. Dear colleagues, as we have in our agenda, the item number 5, which is about any other businesses, I'd like to ask if anyone wishes to take the floor under the item 5. If not, I want to thank you again. And before concluding, I'd like to appreciate the work of International Secretary, first of all. Of course, I have to mention our good friend Marco Bonabella, Daria Boyarskaya, and the newly joined our colleague Milana Ozerino, and of course to our colleagues and the members of Bureau, Paula Cardoza and Artur Gerasimov. Unfortunately, Artur Gerasimov is not able, or was not able to join us today, and I do hope that we will be able to gather in Porto with good mood, with good political stance, and of course with more confident, because we, as we all mentioned, we live in a time where we really are facing tremendous challenges stemming from different parts of the world, and of course we, as OSCE and Parliamentary Assembly, must be ready to come over all these challenges together, as I said before, and the multilateralism or multilateral approach is pretty much needed than ever. So I also want to thank our interpreters for their excellent job, for their efforts, and I hope that by that we can just close today's session, and I wish all the best. Hope to see you in Porto, and tomorrow we will have a joint session and the standing committee, but anyway, I wish all the best for the coming months ahead, and by that I want to close today's session. Thank you very much.